Hi everyone, Sean Healy, personal development educator and NLP trainer here, and you're watching another episode of the Sean Healy Relationship Resourcing Series, a series designed to offer tips, tools, strategy and education to help us have the best quality lives and relationships that we can. So welcome to this episode. This episode is entitled Abuser Mindset and Payoffs. I thought I'd do a little bit around this tragic area of certain relationships, because the more educated we have, the more understanding we have, the more effective our interventions can be. So that's why I was interested to talk a little bit about the abuser mindset and also the payoffs to the abuse dynamic for the abuser. So if we're talking about the mindset around control dynamics, fear-based dynamics, if we've got a warped sense of what love is, and that part of love entitles us to objectify our partner, to use our partner as a source for meeting our own needs without necessarily taking our partner's well-being or needs into account. There's this sense of entitlement that goes along with it. My needs are prioritized over yours, and love is about you doing what I want you to do. And sometimes there's a series of elements that can lead to this, but one correlation that seems to be very strong is around the kinds of role models we got about intimate relationship when we were young. So it's important too to make a distinction here a little bit, I think, between types of abusers, because certain types of domestic abusers, they use control, fear, entitlement, prioritizing self over others, anger, rage, or physical violence to get what they want in terms of their intimate relationships. But for some abusers, those type of toxic dynamics only exist in the context of personal relationship. Everywhere else, they actually are quite willing to compromise, in their professional life. They may be highly respectful of their colleagues. They may be quite willing to compromise, to work collaboratively towards a goal, so that what you find is these types of predatory or highly self-focused dynamics of exploitation at any cost only appears relative to their closest personal relationships, their partner and their children potentially, or even just their partner, and they're woefully unaware of how much that toxicity is reflected back on the children in the form of witnessed trauma. But in every other area of their life, they present very well, and they're very effective necessarily at covering up or justifying or denying that anything is going on that's dysfunctional under the family roof. If we're talking about cluster B type personalities, though, these are the narcissists, the antisocial personality disorder individuals, the psychopathic style individuals. The difference between people with extreme character disorders and everybody else is what you generally tend to find with those individuals is that they will, the type of symptomology and the type of relational dynamics of exploitation that they create tends to be across the board, so that they will have problems in the workplace as well as in the home. If we're talking about, and so that can be sometimes different, even though, so it tends to be that people with extreme character disorder, well, you're likely to find across all contexts of their life, they're going to have this relationships of exploitation, compared to people who are domestically abusive, and their relationships of exploitation, control, and fear are related to their ideas around love and family dynamic only. And this can be highly confusing and devastating to a partner, especially if you kind of go, how is it that I'm treated so poorly and everybody else seems to be treated so well? Can be truly devastating. for a partner to witness. Not to mention, if the abuser, be they somebody who has abusive tendencies across all contexts of their life or only in intimate context, if they're very good at hiding what they're doing, um, the better ones tend to excel at having very effective social hiding skills, and even may go above and beyond to promote a very favourable external impression. Perhaps they'll get involved in community charities and support. They're always there for their friends. They can never do too much. They're charming. They're gregarious. So I can even offset what I'm doing behind closed doors by really getting very good at fostering and promoting a very good external persona, because then it makes it even more difficult for my very dysfunctional behaviour within my relationship to be called out, or for anyone to even believe that someone is, how could that person, and in certainly in many instances where that I've dealt with, where it's turned out that people have been exposed for abuse style dynamics, often there is kind of shock and mystification in terms of, really, that person? I never would have suspected. And so we have to be very mindful that impression management and social hiding can be, skills that these individuals can really excel at to continue their relationships of exploitation. And of course, there's a lot more that we can say about this style, but I wanted to move a little bit more into the payoffs. So, what do we get? What do we get for treating our loved ones so poorly? Well, some of the payoffs that come from this type of behaviour, which again makes it very difficult to get people to shift and change their ways, is if I'm controlling through various forms and utilizing fear within my family system, what that means is that I have all the upsides of a relationship and none of the downsides. I don't have to compromise. I don't have to think about what you want. If I'm either overtly abusive, or I've created a backdrop of threat and kind of an ominous environment, what that means is everybody is paying a lot of attention to me. I get out of anything I don't want to do because nobody wants to upset me and risk facing my wrath. I get to be priority number one in everybody's behaviours and focus of attention. I get to be the king or queen of my domain. I get to control everything on my own terms. I get to give only when I want to give. So again, anyone who's reasonably proficient, and this is part of the confusing dynamic around abuse, is it's not an all one way. I think of it sometimes like poker machines, that if you got on a poker machine and all the time you put money in and every single time you lost, then it's only going to be so long before you've had enough and you'll step away from it. However, small wins here and there trigger hope in us, so that I will from time to time appear magnanimous, generous and giving, but I'm only going to give when it feels comfortable for me, when I see benefit for me. It's not a genuine giving. And I'll only prioritize you occasionally if I can see some benefit and payoff in it for me. So this is, again, it's important to understand that there's payoffs for this type of toxic behavior, because this again speaks to why it can be so difficult for abusive individuals to turn the corner and start to do things a different way. Because if I've had everything on my own terms, really, why would I want to? And I don't, and I've got very skilled at justifying why my behaviours are absolutely necessary and validated, and that I know best for you and the family, and I get all the recognition and acknowledgement when things go well, and I get to blame you when things go wrong. So I don't have to take accountability, but I get all the rewards and accolades when things are going well. I get to dictate the terms of the parenting and the relationship, but I don't have to do any of the work to make those things happen. and this is why I think, if I, I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, that Lundy Bancroft was talking about, of the 2,000 plus individuals that were placed into a batterer-based program, that almost none of those individuals came off their own volition. They were either forced into it because their partners had said, "That's it, I can't take this anymore, change or I leave," or they had been ordered by the courts to attend a program. So that there tends to be this external based pressure that forces abusers into considering whether or not they will change. But it's what this means is we have to understand how demanding that may then be, and how complex it is that individuals are going to, knuckle down and do the really hard work about changing dynamics that were entirely beneficial for them. What it takes in developmental maturity and personal internal confrontation. There's a lot that has to go on in an individual to let go of a way of life that works for them, regardless of how toxic it is. Especially when I don't really have a problem with what I'm doing, but there's now a lot of external pressure on me to require me to change if I want to avoid exclusion or punishment in some way. And so this is why it becomes so important that we understand that, abusers can be very good at triggering hope and begging and pleading that they'll change. And again, that's part of that cycle of abuse. That there's things build up. There's the actual moment of kind of violence of words or violence of action, and then of course this period of hooking you back in through begging and pleading and charm and seduction, and igniting the hope in you that this time, that was the last time, I absolutely swear, it's going to get better from here. And then we go through this moment potentially of peace and calm, and then bang, back we go through the cycle again, so that we can get caught in this cycle of rotation over and over. But I've learned how to plead with you that I'm going to change. So understanding, again, and this is where some of the misconceptions are. Let's say, for example, if someone is abusive and they're blaming their addiction for that. "Oh, I'm an alcoholic, that's the only reason I'm abusive." There are plenty of people who are alcoholics who are never violent or abusive to others. They may be destructive to themselves. And that's, again, is often one of the distinctions for me around abuse dynamics. The abuser will behave in some kind of destructive way, but it will only end up, the only people who will pay the price for that are the people around them, not them. Whereas alcoholics can do a lot of things that are highly dysfunctional that they end up personally paying the price for. But it's important to separate addiction and abuse dynamics. These two, one does not cause the other. The person is abusive before they become an addict, or also as they are an addict. But it's not the other way around. And again, certain abusers, knowing that they can use the cover of their addiction, will already have a plan in mind of how they want to behave, and then they'll go out drinking or drugging or whatever they're doing, and then use that as a camouflage. So for somebody to be in treatment for addiction, unless they are in a batterer-based program specifically, then and seeing a therapist or therapists who understand abuse-based dynamics, then I would be highly distrusting of chances of success. So that's a tough thing to hear, but I think it's important that we really understand what we're up against here. And it can be a very challenging and demanding road for somebody to change their way of learning how to relate to their associations with love, and how love might entitle them to behave however the hell they want, even viciously and cruelly towards their partner, Well, because I love you. And we would argue that there's nothing to do with um, functionality in that kind of process. So unless we're seeing specific action backed up behind words, and people are committed to a long-term program that really does address and understand the dynamics of abuse, then there's every likelihood that unfortunately we're going to see relapses. Um, and and like I said, that can be tough to hear, but I hope that this particular episode, it's brief, certainly can't cover everything. But once again, I would definitely encourage people to look at the work of people like Lundy Bancroft. Um, Psychologist George Simon is another one his books are well worth looking at. Jess Hill, who is an author of the book See What You Made Me Do. Um, and there are lots of resources out there for people to navigate this highly um, and highly devastating framework of relationship. Um, so I hope this episode gives you a few things to think about. And if you're somebody who's seeking education because you're in an abuse dynamic, then getting the kind of support around you that you need, and ideally potentially being discreet about that, um, so that you preserve yourself and you don't run the risk of retribution from your partner because they feel that you're somehow threatening the relational dynamic or the control dynamic that they've set up. Then making sure you've got support around you is so important, because again, one of the things that often goes with this dynamic is a sense of our partner slowly isolating us from individuals who will threaten what the abuser has set up. So we need to find subtle ways and safe ways to do that. I would not necessarily recommend that. Sometimes people are well intentioned and they say, well, look, if you're not happy with what's going on, then you need to talk to your partner about it. And that's a great piece of advice for people who are in a reasonably functional relationship, someone who's not abusive. Well, I might not like what you have to say, but I'm willing to work with you for the sake of the relationship, and I'm willing to make genuine sacrifices for a relationship because I've understood that I'm willingly part of a couple now, and I love you and I love me enough to genuinely work for the relationship. But if I'm in an abuse-based dynamic, that advice does not work because your partner is not wanting to hear what you want to say. They will minimize it. They will stomp all over it. They will be aggressive towards you. Anything to get you to quieten down and stop resisting, so that they get to dominate perception. They get to control how things are perceived. So this is not a two-way conversation here when we're talking about abuse dynamics. My intention as an abuser is not to get to understand you more, but rather that that I get you to be submissive and compliant and non-combative. And if I have to press hard to get you to learn that lesson, then I'm going to do that. If I can't coerce you into it. So this is really tough to hear, but well worth knowing, and it's important. Like I said, these are complex dynamics, and you really need to get yourself good quality education from support people who have an understanding of just how kind of complex these dynamics are. Because like I said, abusers do not want to get caught, so they will do whatever they can to avoid giving up the game. And the longer they've been doing this for, if you're not the first relationship of abuse they've been through, then they have refined their skills. So this is why it's so important that, education gives us clarity in really confusing dynamics. And we need that clarity because, again, if I'm an abuser, I want you questioning, I want you in doubt, I want you in fear, because that takes you away from your cognitive clarity. And stops you from seeing what's really going on. So education and good external support helps us start to re-navigate and get as clear as we can to make the kinds of decisions about really protecting ourselves and getting the kind of love that we truly deserve. So there's the episode. Thank you for watching. Hope you found it something that's thought-provoking and valuable. If you've seen some of my episodes before, then thank you so much. And also, if you want to check me out on my podcast series, Sean Healy Tools, available on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and at the website emergencetraining.com.au. If there's any topics, and I really appreciate people sending in ideas for videos, been very grateful. If I feel I know something that I can offer at least something, or point you in the direction of people I think are contributing in this area, then I will certainly kind of do so. As I say, if you know, it's so important to get support around you if that's what you need, and take care of yourself. And thank you for watching. See you on another episode. Bye for now.